In the bustling village of Abodo, nestled deep within the lush green lands of Igboland, life moved to the rhythm of the marketplace. Every morning, as the sun crept over the horizon, the villagers would gather at the market square to trade goods, share news, and engage in the small but significant rituals that bound their community together. The market was the heart of Abodo, where the pulse of village life could be felt most strongly. Among the many voices in the market, one often went unnoticed: Chinyo, a widow in her 40s who sold vegetables at a modest stall near the edge of the square. Her presence was quiet, her movements deliberate and measured. She was known by everyone but acknowledged by few, her role seemingly insignificant in the grander scheme of things. Yet, there was something about Chinyo, something that set her apart from the other traders. It was in her eyes, which seemed to see more than others, to understand more deeply the undercurrents of life in Abodo. Chinyo's life had not been easy. Widowed at a young age, she had learned to navigate the challenges of life with quiet resilience. She had no children of her own, and in a village where family was everything, this left her on the periphery of many social circles. But Chinyo was not one to complain. She went about her days with a calm dignity, finding solace in her work and in the small joys of everyday life. One day, as Chinyo was arranging her vegetables, she noticed a familiar figure lingering nearby. It was Obi, a middle-aged man who had once been a prosperous farmer in Abodo. But years of poor harvest and the loss of his wife had taken a toll on him. Now, he moved through the market with a slow, almost ghostly presence, his clothes tattered, and his eyes downcast. Chinyo observed him with concern. Obi had always been a respected member of the community, but in recent years, he had become a shadow of his former self. He seemed lost, both to himself and to the village that had once held him in high esteem. Today, he seemed particularly troubled, his hands trembling slightly as he picked up and put down various items without really seeing them. "Obi," Chinyo called out gently, her voice cutting through the noise of the market. He looked up, startled, as if he had not expected anyone to notice him. "Come, sit with me for a moment." Obi hesitated, his pride and his need for comfort warring within him. After a moment, he shuffled over to Chinyo's stall and sat on the small stool she offered. She handed him a fresh yam from her basket, and he accepted it with a grateful nod. "You know, Obi," Chinyo began softly, "life has a way of burdening us with more than we think we can bear. But sometimes, sharing those burdens, even just in words, can make them lighter." Obi sighed deeply, his rough hands turning the yam over as if searching for answers in its smooth skin. "It's been hard, Chinyo," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I feel like I've lost everything, my wife, my farm, my place in this village. Now, I'm just a shadow, wandering through days that no longer have meaning." Chinyo nodded, understanding the depth of his despair. "You've lost much, Obi, but you haven't lost everything. You're still here, and that means there's still hope. The village is changing, and you can find your place in it again. You're not alone, Obi. We're all in this together." For the first time in a long while, Obi looked up at her, really looked at her, and in Chinyo's calm, steady gaze, he saw the truth of her words. He realized that the village he had once been a part of had not abandoned him, he had simply lost his way. And maybe, just maybe, he could find it again. As Obi left Chinyo's stall that day, there was a small but significant change in his posture. His shoulders were still bowed, but there was a new resolve in his step, a flicker of hope where there had been none before. As the weeks passed, the air in Abodo began to hum with the murmur of change. The villagers who had once moved silently through their days, carrying their burdens in solitude, began to speak, softly at first, but with increasing confidence. The seeds of discontent, planted by years of being ignored, were beginning to grow into something new. It started with small conversations. Young men and women, like Namdi and Ifeoma, who had often been overlooked by the village elders, began to talk about their dreams for Abodo. They spoke about the need for more representation in the village's decision-making, about the desire for a future where everyone, not just the elders, had a voice. At first, these conversations happened in the shadows, behind market stalls, in the quiet of homes late at night, and in the corners of the fields where they walked. But slowly, as more people joined in, these whispers began to spread. One afternoon, as Chinyo sat at her stall, she overheard Namdi speaking passionately to a small group of villagers. "We cannot continue to live as if we have no say in our future," he said, his voice filled with determination. "The elders make decisions, but they do not ask us, those who will live with the consequences. We need to be heard." Chinyo listened, her heart swelling with pride. She had known Namdi since he was a child, and she could see in him the spark of leadership that Abodo needed. She thought of Obi and the quiet strength he had found in their conversation, and she realized that this was not just about Namdi or Obi. This was about the whole village, the silent ones who had endured, who had waited for their time to come. That evening, as the sun set over Abodo, a meeting was held under the great Udola tree, where the elders had gathered for generations. But this time, there were more voices. Young and old, men and women, farmers and traders, all came to speak, to share their dreams for the village. The elders, initially resistant, soon realized that this was not a rebellion but a call for unity. Chinyo stood at the edge of the gathering, watching with quiet satisfaction as the villagers found their voices. In the months that followed, the changes in Abodo were slow but steady. The elders, though reluctant at first, began to include more voices in their decisions. Young people like Namdi and Ifeoma became more involved, and their energy revitalized the village. New ideas were discussed, and new ways of doing things were explored. For Obi, the transformation was personal as well. Encouraged by Chinyo's words, he had begun to return to his old farm, slowly reclaiming the land that had once provided for him and his family. It was hard work, and there were days when he felt the weight of his losses all over again, but he was not alone. Chinyo, true to her nature, offered her quiet support. She would visit him from time to time, bringing small gifts of food or simply sitting with him as he walked. Their conversations were often brief, but they were filled with understanding. Abodo had changed. The village that had once been divided between the silent ones and the decision-makers was now united. There was still work to be done, and challenges remained, but the village was stronger for it. For Obi, the farm had become not just a source of food but a source of healing. Each day he walked the land, he felt a little more whole. And for Chinyo, the quiet observer, her role had been more important than she ever realized. Through her kindness, her wisdom, and her patience, she had helped to shape the new Abodo. As Abodo embraced its new direction, there remained echoes of the past that lingered in the minds of its people. The changes that had taken place were monumental, but they had also stirred memories, some joyous, others painful. For Obi, the revitalization of his farm brought back bittersweet recollections of the life he once had with his late wife, Nneka. Each seed he planted, each crop he harvested, was a reminder of the days when they had walked the land together. One evening, as the sky turned a deep purple and the air grew cool, Obi sat at the edge of his farm, lost in thought. Chinyo, as she often did, came to sit beside him. She had sensed his melancholy over the past few days and knew that the progress in the village had stirred something deeper within him. "Obi," she said softly, "you've done well. The farm, the village, it's all moving forward." Obi nodded but said nothing for a moment. Then, in a voice thick with emotion, he replied, "It's strange, Chinyo. The more things change, the more I'm reminded of what I've lost. Nneka and I dreamed of this farm flourishing like it is now, but she's not here to see it. Sometimes I wonder if all this is for nothing." Chinyo placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch steady and reassuring. "It's never for nothing, Obi. Nneka's memory is in every part of this land, in the growth you've nurtured. She's here, even if you can't see her. Obi wiped a tear from his eye, nodding. He knew Chinua was right, but the ache of loss was something that could not be easily soothed. Still, there was comfort in knowing that he had not been forgotten, that his journey had meaning, even in the midst of his sorrow. The following day, the village gathered once again under the Udola tree. This time, the meeting was not about decisions or changes but about remembrance. The elders, led by Namdi, suggested that the village should honor those who had been lost, people like Neka, who had once been the heart and soul of Abodo but whose voices had faded over time. The ceremony was simple but powerful. Villagers shared stories of their loved ones, speaking their names aloud so they would not be forgotten. Chinua spoke of her late husband, Yuzo, a man who had lived with quiet dignity and had supported her vegetable stall before his untimely death. Obi, with a voice that trembled but did not break, spoke of Neka, her laughter, her kindness, and the way she had made their farm a place of warmth and love. As each villager spoke, it became clear that the strength of Abodo lay not just in its future but in its past. The silent ones, those who had been marginalized, forgotten, or lost, were still a part of the village's fabric. Their stories were woven into the land, the trees, the crops, and the very air that the villagers breathed. As night fell, the village lit oil lamps and placed them in the market square, a glowing tribute to the voices that had once whispered through the streets of Abodo but were now finally being heard.